True crime-obsessed teen who killed. Case of Domina Cherry. Domina Cherry's case is a disturbing illustration of how a fascination with actual crime may lead to tragic ends, as depicted by the case of Domina Cherry. This is demonstrated by the fact that Domina Cherry's case was investigated. However, despite the fact that Domina's interests were deeply steeped in the macabre, one could claim that she was a typical teenager in many respects. Over the course of time, what began as a casual interest in real crime stories gradually developed into an addiction that she could not stop herself from engaging in. She was a voracious consumer of crime films, podcasts, and books, particularly those novels and podcasts that documented the lives of legendary serial killers. She was constantly on the lookout for her next fix. Domina found herself idolizing prominent killers and immersing herself in the grisly details of their murders over the course of time. What began as a curiosity gradually grew into a fascination, and she found herself obsessed with the intricacies of killings. The severity of Domina's concern intensified, and she started isolating herself from her family and friends as a result of this. Additionally, she started spending more time on the internet, where she participated in real crime forums where dark and violent discussions were an everyday occurrence. During her time there, she came across a group of individuals who shared her confusing preoccupation with criminality and violence. She was able to locate individuals who shared her interests. Domina, on the other hand, went one step further. She fantasized about carrying out the perfect murder, much like the different murderers that she had researched. Aside from the fact that she was attracted by atrocities, she was also captivated by the methods that the murderers employed and the ways in which they were able to fool law authorities. Almost immediately after that, she started expressing a desire to try to replicate the murderer's actions in real life to some extent. During the weeks leading up to the murder, Domina meticulously planned out her assault, paying close attention to as many details as possible. The person who was victimized by her was a close friend who held her in the highest regard and had complete faith in her. Domina would breach this trust in a disastrous way when she got her companion into a situation in which she could carry out her evil dream because of the surroundings. This would be the moment when the trust would be absolutely destroyed. Domina had spent a significant amount of time researching well-known criminal cases, and the brutality and premeditation of the murder were reminiscent of characteristics of those cases. She did not commit the murder on the spur of the moment. Rather, she planned it out in a cold and calculated manner and carried it out with the intention of imitating the very murderers that she admired. Concerningly, Domina exhibited a stunning lack of fear or regret in the aftermath of the event, which is troubling. She demonstrated a peculiarly calm attitude upon the arrival of law enforcement at the scene of the crime, while at the same time providing very little explanation for her behavior and acting almost as if she were removed from the reality of what she had done. There was a wealth of evidence that was discovered during the course of the investigation into the murder that pointed to Domina's preoccupation with true crime. Her web history revealed that she had devoted a significant amount of time to researching serial killers, techniques of murder, and forensic science. It became clear to the researchers that she had been influenced by the criminals that she had admired so much, and they found out that she had conducted research on how to commit a crime without leaving any evidence behind. It became abundantly clear that this was not simply a murder, but rather Domina's attempt to bring her horrible nightmares to life, therefore transforming herself from a passive consumer of violent content into an active participant in real-world horror. However, it was clear that this was not homicide. The media paid a tremendous deal of attention to Domina's trial, not only because of the extremely grisly nature of the crime, but also because of the fact that her preoccupation with actual criminal activity played a role in the proceedings. The prosecution argued that her fixation with stories about violent crimes had corrupted her vision of reality, leading her to view murder as something that was thrilling rather than something that was dreadful. This was one of the allegations that was made by the prosecution. Domina had become desensitized to violence as a result of her consistent exposure to crime narratives, which finally led her to regard the murder of her friend as a technique to achieve her perverted desires. According to the testimony of psychologists who testified during the trial, Domina and her companion were killed in order to fulfill her perverted fantasies, in spite of the fact that there was no evidence to suggest that her acts were the result of any personal quarrel or vendetta. It seemed as though they were the culmination of a dark fantasy. During the course of the trial, there were discussions that took place on the extent to which Domina's preoccupation with actual criminal activity was responsible for the murder. She was portrayed as a young woman who had been deceived by an unceasing barrage of violent media, according to the argument that was presented by the defense. This argument said that her psychological state had been affected as a result of the information that she had taken in. During the time that everything was going on, the prosecution asserted that Domina's actions were intentionally carried out and that her preoccupation with illegal activity was nothing more than an expression of a more profound and potentially hazardous personality style. Following the completion of the trial, the jury reached a verdict that was in favor of the prosecution, and Domina was found guilty of murder in the first degree. Domina Cherry's position became a focal point for conversations over the morality of true crime content and the potential repercussions that it could have on viewers who are easily persuaded. These discussions were centered on the scenario between Domina Cherry and the media. Domina's narrative shed light on the more ominous parts of this trend, despite the fact that the vast majority of people who consume genuine crime do so without encountering any difficulties. Especially among younger audiences, true crime has emerged as a genre that is becoming increasingly popular. As a result of the circumstances surrounding her case, inquiries were made into the responsibilities of content creators, as well as the subject of whether or not the tendency of the media to romanticize or humanize killers could inspire vulnerable persons to participate in risky activity. The narrative of Domina provided as a timely warning that for certain individuals, the boundaries between entertainment and reality can get obliterated in a fatal manner. Despite the fact that millions of people enjoy reading true crime stories as a way to obtain a better understanding of the worst elements of human nature, or to witness justice being served, this is the situation that has arisen. Domina was found guilty and given a sentence of life in prison during the course of the proceedings taking place during the trial. Her narrative continues to serve as a cautionary tale about the potential dangers that are associated with unchecked obsession all over the world through its continued dissemination. However, even in the present day, worries over the effect of the media and the psychological repercussions of being exposed to violence on a daily basis continue to make reference to the case. Although Domina Cherry's acts are extreme, it is crucial to highlight that they serve as a severe warning about the capacity of the media to influence attitudes, and in circumstances that are exceedingly rare, push individuals to perform horrible atrocities. This is something that should be taken into consideration. It is a sobering example of how attraction, particularly with something as heinous as actual criminal activity, may lead to consequences that are beyond anyone's ability to comprehend. The life that she stole, the destruction that she wrought, and the way that her mind got overtaken by violent fantasies are all examples of this. Would you like it? Hit the like button and subscribe to our channels for more interesting and informative videos.